Have you ever silenced your own voice? Do you remember those moments when everyone told you what you should do, but you forgot what you actually wanted? That's exactly how David started his day. He was 35. To others, he had the perfect life, a well-paid job, a nice apartment, a stable routine. But there was one problem. He wasn't in it. Every morning, he woke up not to the sound of his alarm, but to the silence inside him. He made his coffee, took the same train, saw the same faces, said the same words. Yes, sir? Of course. You're right. But with every yes, a little no inside him grew quieter. One morning, while staring out the metro window, a voice inside him asked, "Is this the life you wanted to live?" He turned his head and saw an old man holding a small notebook. On its cover, written in delicate handwriting, were the words, "Every day you don't write your own story, you become a side character in someone else's." At the next stop, the old man got off. David hesitated for a moment. Then, almost without thinking, he stood up and followed him out. The street was crowded, but for the first time in years, David wasn't rushing anywhere. He wandered aimlessly until he found a small cafe on a corner. He sat down, took out his phone. 8 missed calls, 2 messages from his boss. This time he didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. He opened to a blank page and thought, "When was the last time I truly wanted something?" He sat there for a long time. He couldn't write a single sentence, because he realized he no longer knew what he wanted. That evening, when he got home, he noticed the guitar he hadn't touched in years. He opened the case. The strings were rusty. Still, he picked it up and started to play. The first notes were weak, hesitant. But then a melody began to flow, a familiar one, a fragment of a song he had written back in college. In that moment, something broke free inside him. It was as if the part of him that had been silent for years was finally breathing again. The next morning, he went to work. They were in a meeting. His boss looked at him and said loudly, "David, why are you so quiet again?" David looked up, met everyone's eyes, and simply said, "Because this voice isn't mine anymore." As soon as he said it, the weight of years lifted from his chest. He shut his laptop, placed his ID card on the desk, took his notebook from the drawer, and walked out. He didn't know where he was going, but for the first time, he was going toward himself. The first few days felt amazing. He felt free. Then came the fear. He had no plan. When he asked himself, "What now?" the only answer was silence. He left the city for a while, rented a small cabin by the sea. In the mornings, he walked. In the evenings, he played guitar. At first, the silence was unbearable. But then he realized that silence was simply the echo of his own voice returning. At night, he started writing in his notebook. What he thought, what he felt, even what he didn't know. With each line, he grew a little lighter. One morning, he opened to the first page and wrote in big letters, "My story begins here." Months passed. David kept making music. One day, he gathered the courage to share one of his songs online. Only a few hundred people listened, but among them was a music producer. A few weeks later, David performed live for the first time on a small stage. Under the lights, surrounded by a crowd, he heard his own voice. And after all those years, he could finally say yes to himself. A year later, he rode the same metro again. Same sound of the tracks, same stations. But this time, through his headphones, he heard his own song. He never saw the old man again, but the words on that notebook had become the summary of his life. Every day you don't write your own story, you become a side character in someone else's. He looked out the train window and smiled, And at that moment, he understood. What he'd been searching for all along wasn't a place, a title, or success. It was simply his own voice. And perhaps what we all must one day learn is this. Finding yourself isn't about escaping the world. It's about finally listening to the silence within.